Welcome back to Fridgestuck, the summer of Dancestors. My name is Jen, and in this video we're covering the clear skies of what I call the day-blooded trolls. Meulin's name was suggested by McBatman originally for her Dancestor, Nepeta Leone. Her name was chosen as a pun on mewling, which is the term for the sound cats make. The name Meulin also sounds and looks similar to Merlin, a wizard from Arthurian legend, fitting her title as a mage. Meulin's personality and speech pattern is a parody of Tumblr fan bloggers, specifically from the shipping community. She uses the terminology such as feels and my babies and eee and uses so many gifs in her memeing sign language when words are not enough. Not that I would know anything about being a fangirl. Her behavior itself is a reference to common fan interpretations of Nepeta's character. Meulin continues to channel Nepeta in her typing quirk, since Meulin multiplies letters and punctuation in sets of 9 and uses a prefix with cat faces, albeit with more complicated, varied, and expressive cat emoticons. Meulin, however, showing more a connection to Carcat Vantass, types in all caps, either out of excitement or because she's unable to gauge the loudness of her voice because of her deafness. Her deafness may be a reference to Pedro Ponce de Leon, a monk who was credited as the first teacher for the deaf, teaching them how to speak and how to communicate through writing and simple hand gestures. Homestuck's creator Andrew Hussey must have planned for this far in advance, considering that Nepeta's Lucis, who Meulin shared when she was alive on Before Us, is called Pounce de Leon. Though I'm pretty sure, but we'll need to verify, the sign language Meulin uses is actually spelling out gibberish, but it moves just fast enough for the reader's suspension of disbelief to kick in. As mentioned in the Nepeta Leone episode, Meulin, as a matchmaker, has a specific knack for red romance, leaving the blacker quadrants to her former mate sprit, Kurlos Makara. Fittingly, when playing Openbound Part 2, the heart key is found near Meulin, while the spade key is found near Kurlos. According to Aranea, Meulin is supportive of the High Blood cult, but it's fine because the cult is just harmless superstition. Ha! She also says Meulin is usually private about it, but occasionally slips doctrine out into conversation. This is probably due to the influence of Kurlos' hypnotic chuckle voodoos, and Meulin being completely unaware of her former mate Sprit's actions. This is backed up by her claims of her head feeling foggy, if talked to after several conversations between her and Kurlos, and her inability to remember any of it. Or they could just be high? Really? According to Andrew Hussey, in Part 3 of Openbound, Meulin and Kurlos just sign memes to each other all day while stoned, and it's implied that they smoke catnip together. Why you gotta do that, man? Why you gotta ruin something beautiful? Lastly, Meulin is the only heart player who wasn't decapitated at some point in the story. I'll see myself out. Porum Miriam's name was... Actually, no one definitively knows where Porum's name comes from. Some say it's a deviation of the name Poriam, originally suggested by Kazmat for her Dancestor Kanaya. As Kazmat explains it, her name comes from Porrima, the traditional name of the binary star in System Gamma Virginius, in the Virgo constellation. And the star Porum was named after the Roman goddess Antivorta, aka Porum. Antivorta was the goddess of the future, and pregnant women would often invoke her name to ask for protection during childbirth, as it was a belief that she would be present at the baby's birth if the child emerged head first. Knowledge of the past and children born feet first were her sister's job, by the way. Porraceous is also a word that means a light green color. And I could go on about how Purim is just 2 letters off from the Jewish holiday Purim and go into a full, overly sarcastic story time about Esther, but we don't got time for that. For her typing quirk, Purim writes her lowercase o's with a plus sign attached to the end, giving them the appearance of the sign of Venus, more commonly known as the shorthand symbol for female. Considering that Venus is associated with femininity and fertility, it may connect to her sign of Virgo, the maiden. Or the fact that Purim is known for being as promiscuous in red and black romances as Kanaya is with Ashen. Other fans suspect that Purim's quirk could be read as O positive, the blood type, or as an Ankh, which in more modern interpretations is associated with goths and vampires, both possibly alluding to her nature as a rainbow drinker. The fact that her sign is Virgo not only makes sense for a maid of space, but it may also connect to her character personality, as Purim can be seen as a parody of actual decent feminist SJW bloggers on Tumblr. Andrew Hussey confirmed it as such in the 3rd part of Openbound, saying that she was less boring than Cankry, and that some social justice people should look into that. Purim sought equality for women, challenging gender roles in both before in society and into their game session. This was motivated from a resentment of her role as a Jadeblood, being a predominantly female cast whose sole duty was to care for the mother grub and troll babbies. However, after the eons dwelling in the dream bubbles, she grew a renewed sense of interest in her bloodline's duty, ultimately sharing her knowledge with Kanaya, cementing the Merriams as the most helpful and friendly of the Dancestor pairs. Lastly, while we never got to see Purim actually fight in the comic, we might have the next best thing in the video game world. Indie 2D fighting game Skullgirls has many curvaceous battlers, including DLC characters. One DLC character in particular is the Egyptian-themed vampire villainess Eliza, who has a literal Purim Merriam color palette swap paid for by an Indiegogo backer. Way to go, man. Just way to go. Latula's name was suggested by Rothis, originally for her Dancestor Terezi. Latula could come from Latula, the Hindi sign for Libra. Other fans speculate that her name could also come from the skateboard brand Lush Tula, due to her love of skateboarding. It's also possibly related to the Romanian word Latul, which translates to noose or snare, tying in with neophyte Redglare's death and Terezi's love of nooses. Latula is incredibly protective of her mate Sprit Mituna, to the point where she'll even threaten Damara Megiddo. Terezi even says the same exchange when Damara tries to approach a sleeping Karkat. Must keep fangirl feelings in check. Unlike Terezi, Latula has flat human-like teeth, though it's been explained by her sprite artist to be an oversight. Latula also is not blind, instead she lacks the ability to smell, something she is just insecure enough about that she created her rad 90s skater girl attitude as a coping mechanism. She puts up a front around everyone, typical of a night player, only acting naturally around Purim, to whom she confides in. Maintaining this gamer girl facade is actually shown to be detrimental to her health, the comic mentioning that she gets stressed out over even forgetting Z's at the end of her words, and it's even confirmed that Latula takes medication for anxiety. Karkat, ever the observant one, knows about Latula's fake attitude, saying that she puts on an act for attention. This same attention grabbing is noted on her ability to smell, which Karkat does not believe is much of a disability at all, to which Hussey agrees. Speaking of which, Latula loves giving high fives, but hates to be left hanging. Hussey! Aranea possibly came from the Latin word araneus, which means spider. It could also have come from the word Araneae, an order classification in the Arachnida class, where spiders come from. Her name was suggested by Undertale creator himself, Toby Radiation Fox, originally for her Dancestor, Vriska. Of course, we knew that, but it's also hinted that Terezi Pyrope shares her as an ancestor, from the Alternian point of view at least. They are referred to as the Scourge Sisters, after all. Considering the context between Mindfang and Redglare, I think it's safe to say that the relationship was colligonous, very brief, and very troubling. Just like most of Mindfang's relationships. Aranea is one of the only two Beforean trolls to go God tier, specifically as a Sylph of Light. With this odd combination of curious and chatty info dumper and a God tier most likely to produce busybodies, was it actually a surprise that things with her happened the way they did? Kinda. I mean, the Dancestors are supposed to be over-exaggerated caricatures of the original 12 trolls, so we really should have predicted that Vriska's was going to do something manipulative. The fact that she didn't seem like the type to pull off a morally ambiguous stunt, fully willing to sacrifice anyone or anything around her to get what she wants, in the end justifies the means kind of way, was a bit of a shock. It also didn't help that the scale of her psychic abilities was completely unparalleled. Even as strong as they were, Vriska's own abilities never reached the levels of her deceivingly level-headed Dancestor. Aranea could read minds, control thousands of ghosts simultaneously, and even move planets with her mind. After getting killed in the fight with the Condescension in the wake of Soundpage Game Over, we never see Aranea again. By that I mean, no Aranea is ever seen again. It's like she never existed. For example, 2 alternate Araneas are seen in Soundpage Mini Strife, but not one version of her appears in Soundpage Collide. Are all the Araneas hiding out of shame? Was the combination of a just death after being resurrected by the life ring too much for the dream bubbles to comprehend? We might never know. Also, one last thing. An annoying blue fairy with a mouth for exposition.
Look! Hey! Listen!
Oi. Thank you guys so much for watching this part 2 episode for the Dancestors. I hoped you enjoyed. Is there a fact that I missed? Do you have a suggestion for an episode? Leave it down in the comments below and it might end up on the show someday. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye!
Are you some sort of love expert?
No, but I have friends who are.
They're trolls.